Collectors will not let this die.
I think people have just completely forgotten the powerhouses behind bringing this comic book adaptation to the screen.
Tom, did you manipulate the marketplace this week?
Stay tuned to the end of the video. We're going to announce 5 different giveaway winners. The most trending comic books in the world. And number 10 on the list, who would have thought it's a Mark Spears cover?
Collectors will not let this die. Number 10 on the list, Mark Spears Monsters number 1, the 1 in 20 variant. It is a Nightmare on Elm Street, and we absolutely knew this was going to be a banger. $65 average sales. We're seeing sales in the $75 to $80 range at the peak. It's just a great book, and so many people are getting behind every single thing that he's making right now. Not a surprise, and one of my favorite releases of this last week.
In the last 24 hours, Mark Spears posted on Instagram some progress photos of a cover he was working on for his Kickstarter. It's a glorious portrait shot of Frankenstein. But what I want to dive into here is how much work goes into each piece of art. He's got his quick sketch, a color layout, a custom 3D model, a 3D rendered version, then he paints it, and then he finalizes it in post.
This is absolutely brilliant, and I think it's one of those things that is showing how much staying power Mark Spears has. I am absolutely seeing a lot of influence of Basil Gogos there, who is an Italian artist who did all of the famous monsters of Filmland. If you look at his Frankenstein, if you look at his Wolfman, you can very clearly see a lot of shades that have influenced Mark Spears. And since Basil's was so timeless and everyone has loved it for years and years and years, Mark Spears is very much taking the baton and running with it and doing his own very brilliant versions.
Hit the like and subscribe. We make this video every single week for the comic book community. We've been doing it for over 6 years straight without skipping a beat. Number 9 on the list, Time Slide number 1, a 1 in 50 variant, powerfully done, featuring Cable by creator Rob Liefeld. This was a perfectly timed variant to come out because back in 1990, January 9th, 35 years ago this week, Cable debuted in New Mutants 87 and changed Rob Liefeld's life forever. This is what he had to say this week on Instagram. I walked into the New Mutants with the man called Cable. I was tasked as a 22-year-old to exact change on a book that was in a sales free fall. I presented Cable with no concessions. I wouldn't change his name, his story, and I wouldn't tell you who he really was until I had the reins as writer. He changed my life. Your art can carry you to untold heights. I hit up Rob Liefeld this morning, and this is what he said about the cover. As to this cover, it's a fun piece. Great memories of that piece feeding the Cable hype of 1991 that I'm happy to see in the spotlight again 34 years later. In Time Slide, we have Bishop and Cable teaming up to deal with some time travel shenanigans, trying to prevent the mutants from going extinct. This is a really well-timed book with 2 characters that don't typically get along in the comic books having to meet eye to eye.
Number 8 on the list, a book that should be on all of your radars. We're talking about the Seasons number 1. It's an ash can, and this was distributed 1 per store through Lunar Distribution. It's selling for $10 average sales, and it's a 433% increase in copies sold this week. Now, this is a book by Rick Remender, and the interesting thing is that I don't think a lot of people were thinking about this until Jim Viscardi had him on his podcast. And while he may not be a household name to most of you, you should really start paying attention to what this guy has to say. He's been an industry insider for many, many years. He did have a podcast about 10 years ago. His new podcast is called Let's Talk Comics, and Rick Remender happened to be the guest on the first episode. But this guy is working over at Image right now, and before then he was working at Marvel, and happens to have a new book coming out in June of this year called Marvel, The Art of Stormbreakers. So really, Jim Viscardi is a guy that I really think everyone should start thinking about, and thanks to him, we know so much more about this new Rick Remender book. Summer, winter, spring, and autumn are the Seasons sisters. Their parents have been gone for a decade, and the sisters raised themselves and all of a sudden are falling prey to sinister fate. This does sound like a horror book that I'm going to be very excited on. We know very little about it, but it's Rick Remender, and honestly, everything he writes is just brilliant.
I really enjoy Black Science. 7 to Eternity is fantastic. And, of course, Deadly Class. You got to read Rick Remender is what I'm saying. And this podcast that you just mentioned, led by Jim Viscardi, one of the higher-ups at Image Comics right now, if he's going to be bringing on other industry powerhouses like Rick Remender doing podcasts, talking about upcoming comics, I am not going to be surprised to see other indie titles make the trending list. Be watching rather listening to that show and keep up on the industry.
And another great way to keep up on the industry is by utilizing code TOM101 and getting 2 free weeks of the best app in town. Key Collector Comics, I absolutely use it every single day. We source this list from a larger list of 20 comic books, and you can get that by just signing up.
To get access to the app in its entirety, it's like a couple bucks a month. It pays for itself. But if you just want to try it out, 98% of the app is free. You catalog your comic books. If you want to just know all the keys of a particular run by the click of a button, this is how you find it without having to go through an Overstreet price guide. Let's look at number 7 on the list, Incredible Hulk number 6. This is the first full appearance of Ghost Rider from 1944, World War II.
$15 average sales, $120 for CGC 9.8. This is the first time we are really seeing this character, but the reason why it's on the list this week and we're reporting 115% increase in copies sold is the fact that Hellhunters number 1 just came out and we actually get Ghost Rider 1944's origin story. We get to see him fighting the Nazis, expertly written by Philip Kennedy Johnson.
The Ghost Rider mythos is far beyond just the 3 people typically know. Johnny Blaze, Robbie Reyes, Danny Ketch. No, it goes all the way back with different demons providing the spirit of vengeance to different individuals to take on monsters. And this particular character is a World War II vet, and we're just beginning to see his narrative take place, retroactively spiking his first appearance this week.
Tom, did you manipulate the marketplace this week?
Oh, that just became the clickbait for the video, Russ. Number 6 on the list is Marvel Team Up 141. The first appearance of the Black Suit in comic books, kind of. My voice kind of cracked, but I love this book. Mignola cover, Art Adams team up. I mean, this is a great key book and came out within weeks of ASM 252, the official first appearance of the Black Suit in a comic book. But within 2 weeks, we also saw Spectacular Spider-Man 90 and this comic on the list, Marvel Team Up 141. Seeing $85 average sales, $675 for a 9.8 in November. Now, I pose this question to Jeff, who doesn't care about these 2 books. He focuses in on ASM 252 because of the hard date showing that it's the first appearance. But considering the hype on Secret Wars 8, I ask you, should people care more about Spectacular Spider-Man 90 and Marvel Team Up 141? I say yes, which is why I think this book is on the list this week.
I think anyone who's a fan of the Black Suit needs to have every single one of them. But really, these books have not had enough respect. Everyone likes Secret Wars 8, everyone likes ASM 252, but this Marvel Team Up and Spectacular 90 have just kind of gone ignored. The big thing that I'm looking at is, yes, you want an absolute first. When is the actual date? Even your newest commies, if you go to the comic book shop right now and buy a comic book that came out this week, open it up, you're going to have bought it in January and it will say March 2025 is that release date. So we know even farther back, if you go back to the mid 80s, even back as far as the early 1970s, when things were really, we started caring about release dates, something will hit the newsstand. The newsstand would have said it's September 25th release date, but I've got books that even have a rubber stamp on the front that'll say June 15th. And the person who brought that in and owned the newsstand, they put a specific date on that so they knew when to rotate when something would come off the newsstand because they could strip the cover, they could return these covers. So I think especially for a book like this that everyone's looking for, what is the absolute first time we had the Black Suit? There's so much gray area there. We can really have a lot of shared space, and every single one of these can be whichever one you like. 252 is great, Secret Wars 8 is great, but I love this one specifically because of the Mike Mignola cover.
I appreciate you bringing up date stamps, and then you also think of things like overspray. These books having such a close release date largely means that these were likely on the stands at the same time at most places. I want to know from the community, do we have any OG collectors that remember picking any of these books up? Maybe they can help me out here because it sounds like you agree with me more than the guru.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let us know what you think about that in the comment section below. We'll move on to number 5 on the list because don't forget, we don't just have Creature Commandos coming out right now, and Superman Legacy in the near future, and Supergirl in the distance, and Swamp Thing in the far distance. Somewhere between all of that, we're going to get the Authority. Authority, issue number 1, at the list at number 5. $30 average sales, $279 for a CGC 9.8 January this year.
Knowing that the Superman trailer has spiked up a lot of DC things, which is why we had Lobo and Guy Gardner last week, people had forgotten about The Authority. If you look at the last time we talked about this book, it was in November of 2023, a full 14 months ago. But Speckers have not been forgetting, because this book, since the last time we reported on it, has an increase of 120 Slavs on the census. So while we hadn't been talking about anything since we knew we had someone cast as the engineer back in 2023, now all of a sudden we have more traction, specifically because James Gunn's Superman universe is moving forward, and a lot of these smaller characters, people are thinking about them again.
Casting spiked up interest because it was slated for Superman Legacy. Who knows if that's changed at this point, but the solicitation led us to believe that she was going to be considered a villain, to which James Gunn responded via tweet saying, "Villain is such a disparaging term," which is indicating that she's not a full-fledged villain, maybe an anti-hero, which would be a unique take for a superhero movie to not have him go up against just a full-on bad guy. Join the mystery mail, call 1 per box. We're sending out a comic that's already selling for the box cost of $34.99. We have John Boy Myers' Magic #1 trade dress going out to every single member, alongside of a Department of Truth New York City Comic-Con exclusive. We have multiple covers from NYCC, and you're guaranteed one of them, along with back issues and exclusive print, and you support the show. Hit the website, link in the description. Let's talk about number 4 on the list with Horizon Zero Dawn #1. I don't think enough people know that Peach was all over this title, and there are under 30 copies graded on the census.
This video game was absolutely amazing and won an award for its writing. I got a copy when I bought my PS5, and it absolutely wrapped me into its great storytelling and its beautiful, beautiful visuals. So when the comic book came out in 2020, I was all over it. And a bunch of people bought this at the shop, and then nothing. So $4 average sales for this book, $66 for the highest sale of a CGC 9.8. I mean, there's not a whole lot of buy-in for this, but the fact that we've had so many great video game movies and some failures in the past couple years, Borderlands, I'm looking at you right there, this one has potential.
Sony announced 2 different projects that they're bringing to the screen. Helldivers, never played the game, but the more important, Horizon Zero Dawn. It's optioned. This is the issue #1 to know about, to hunt for. And there are so few on the census that I can't help but think that people just weren't specking on this book when they should have. And this all happened at a perfect time, the week that the trailer dropped for Last of Us Season 2. And I'll remind you, when Last of Us dropped, there were people that were a little soft on acquiring that book up until the show, and then the book blew the hell up because it took over media.
To be perfectly honest, I even forgot there was a second season coming. So the instant the new trailer came out, I started looking at, where are these selling? Can I get a #1 for a good deal? Nope. They are already expensive. They're already over $1,000, and everyone that already has Last of Us is absolutely anticipating that Season 2 is going to be just as good, if not better, than the first one. So if you can get in ground floor for a really low entry level, below $100 for a 9.8, and probably finding raw ones out in the wild for cover price, this might be a good book to just grab.
Number 3 on the list, Charles SoulBrilliance. We have 8 Billion Genies #1. What if every single person got one genie and one wish? The chaos that would ensue. And we have $30 average sales, $80 for a CGC 9.8 this very month. And I think people have just completely forgotten the powerhouses behind bringing this comic book adaptation to the screen.
We have talked about this book a couple times in the past. Back in June 2022, Amazon secured the rights and everyone was excited that this would be turned into something. And in March 2024, we found out that Seth Rogen's company, Point Grey, was going to adapt the film, and that Rodney Rothman, who was the writer for Into the Spider-Verse, was attached. Those were both interesting things, but right now we are seeing a 400% increase in copies sold because Lucky Devils #1 was released this last week, done amazingly by the same writer and artist.
That's right. And that book took off, and people are buying it mostly because they did such a great job with 8 Billion Genies, and Charles Soule's all over the place, just killing it. And this is now a dynamic duo that when they do something new, people are not just going to read it, they're going to spec on it because of how nuclear 8 Billion Genies went.
And I know you want me to say it. Number 2 on the list, a book that nobody was specking on, Lobos Back, number 1. I mean, last week there were a bunch of Lobo books on the list, and they made sense because we had Omega Man number 3, his first appearance, and Lobo number 1, which was his miniseries. Now, all of a sudden, Lobos Back, number 1 from 1992. This is one of those miniseries that forever you could just pick up the 4-issue miniseries for 10 to 15 bucks. So when I report a $3 average sale on number 1, you're not going to be surprised. And $79 for CGC 9.8, you're probably not going to be surprised either. This is one of those things where Lobo, we're trying to figure out what's going to actually happen in the story, and are we going to care? He's a fan favorite character, and if you look at what happened, you've got the Omega Man Lobo, which is not the one that everyone knows and loves, and then in 1990, we had the mini-series, which kind of introduced him. There was a one-shot, that was a Christmas one that came out in 1991, and then Lobos Back came out in May of 1992, another 4-issue mini-series, kicking off a very long run of Lobo getting between 3 to 5 mini-series every single year for the next 5 or 6 years. 342% increase in copies sold this week because I believe lots of the people that think Lobo is a fun character are just looking for more Lobo content.
I think also a lot of people don't know what to spec on as it pertains to Lobo. He may be a fan favorite, but I think a lot of people don't know him. And seeing Jason Momoa get all hyped up has now, garnered some interest to look through his catalog. And they're seeing issue number 1s and they're getting excited. I mean, $3, sure. $80 on a book that you can buy for $3, that seems pretty high. I will say that there are some other books that you should look at over others. Here's a couple of them. Adventures of Superman, issue number 464. This is the first time we see Superman go up against Lobo, and it happens on the cover. Then I gotta throw out there, Superman Man of Steel number 30. I've always loved this comic book.
This is really one of my personal favorites because it's got kind of a hard cardstock cover and it comes with a decal sheet, and you can put these decals on the front and have Lobo fighting Superman, making your own fights in front of the Daily Planet sign.
And we know Lobo is gonna be introduced in the Supergirl movie. And when did that happen in the comics? Well, Supergirl and Lobo meet first in Brave and the Bold number 3 in 2007. All of these books are just as cheap as the book on the list. Which one excites you more? Now stay tuned to the end of the video. We're going to announce 5 different giveaway winners this week. And I had so much fun picking so many people to send comics to that we're going to double down and do this again because I didn't just make a Santa Fung first appearance of Lobo exclusive. I also made a Bjorn Beren's cover. And we're going to pick 5 different people who are joined on our SMS group via comictom.com. It's the way we can contact you and keep you updated on all things we're doing. And if you win, we have a way to get your address, etc., and know that it's you. Go to comictom.com, join the SMS group, and let's talk about the number 1 most trending book in the world. Fantastic Four. Is that right? 280?
Yeah, it is. This is one of those that I think Fantastic Four, we're going to see more and more of these books spiking because of the Fantastic Four movie coming out.
But it's not because of the movie.
It has nothing to do with the movie. It has to do with Marvel Rivals.
That's right. This is the first appearance of Sue Storm as Malice. This right here is the evil version of Sue Storm after she goes through some traumatic events and kind of does a Wanda narrative where she goes pretty evil. But she also looks rather different than what we know her to be. We have $4 average sales, $135 for a CGC 9.8 because the skin is available in Marvel Rivals. This has now taken this book to mainstream attention, and now it's a key book that you gotta know. But to spec on it, I don't know about.
A 775% increase in copies sold this week, and if you look at every single previous copy that's sold in a 9.8, it was in the $60 to $85 range. So someone really knew that this video game is going to be popular. They threw it up for a buy it now, and one person hit buy it now at $135. This may end up being an outlier. This may end up being the new tent peg. We're not 100% certain because this is not a book that people are specking on because it's a TV show or a movie or something. These video game people, no disrespect at all, completely and totally. I play video games. You play video games. Ryan plays a lot of video games. A lot of times when you have a new fan base, they are just going to buy what they like. Someone really wants Malice on their wall, they're going to worry about buying that book, and they're not going to care about the condition. They just want the book.
That's right. You know, if you have people who are playing a character for hours a day, wanting to get a memento that they can display or own or be proud of, it makes sense. And there's not a whole lot of Malice to go around. Thus, we see a book like this just propel on our list. I just want to throw this out there. I don't think you should be going to buy 9/8 of this hoping that it's going to just explode long term. I could be wrong, but this is one of those books that you now need to have on your mental Rolodex. It's a cover you need to know, because when you are hunting, you are going to find this in dollar bins. You're going to find this in the $5 bin. And this is now a book that, despite if other collectors think should be hot, is scorching. Like and subscribe. And as always,
Geek responsibly.
enough said. Thanks so much for watching the video, guys. Let's actually announce some giveaways real quick. We're going to put the last 4 digits of the phone numbers of the winners on the screen. But for our Spotify audio listeners, we're going to read them to you. 9206 5212 9637 and 8488. Check your SMS. If we texted you, we're sending you a comic book.
And the 5th winner is Alicio Gomez. If that is your name, you should check your phone for an SMS from comictom.com.
That's right. Make sure to join our SMS group. We are doing a ton of giveaways, and we're just getting started. Have a great weekend, guys.